Well, greetings from Ellensburg in the Pacific Northwest. The other day, a wise woman, an elder from a local church, spoke to me, and I understood why something happened. It was the best preacher in Ellensburg at the CMA Church, Scott Center, who walked out after several years. And the last Sunday, he looked to the congregation to the left and said, "Scum of the earth." And then to the right, and he said, "Scum of the earth." And then he left. Unbelievable. Do you want to know why, though? I finally understood why he said this. The answer was revealed one day walking past the beautiful old Liberty Theater down the street from my historic home and the little kids cafe shop, bookshop, and a group of city vehicles with big city workers were putting up an image of a brass ape over the Liberty Theater. I walked over to them and asked, "Why don't you put a sculpture of Lewis and Clark with Sacagawea pointing west and John Clymer on the other side, a sculpture of him painting them, to tell the history of how the West was won?" Well, one of the big workers barked like an ape and said, "They're over there," pointing around the corner. Suddenly, at that moment, I understood why the spirit of the West had been removed from Ellensburg. He was pointing around the corner to another sculpture of a twisted bull there on Main Street, the icon of Ellensburg. And down the street at the library in front was another brass sculpture of a huge demon-shaped coyote. Where do they come from? Well, I knew where by sitting for 20 years with my dad every afternoon after work at the beautiful Eagles Lodge with the World War II elders. And this began in the 80s, leaving Texas for my brother's Marine Corps family in Yakima, and then moving to Ellensburg to attend CW, back where the Pacific Northwest was called God's country. You see, in those days, our founding fathers, mostly Masons, were called, well, were Petras, like Jesus called Peter, and like Paul was, cornerstones. Every downtown had buildings of exalted beauty, like Spokane's Scottish Rite Temple, whose cornerstone was set in place by Theodore Roosevelt when he rode across the West, creating the National Park System. But the Eagles Lodge was special. It was 3 stories of beautiful stone and brick and sculpture with a huge basketball court on the second floor and an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the basement. The inside woodwork was stunning. Why? You see, it was the YMCA. And spirit of the West was alive with John Clymer and Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea too, all his wonderful paintings and sculptures. This place, the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, something the founders of the West built as their memorial to their sons. But it had competition across the street from the Pearl Street Police Department with Dick and Jane's psychedelic drug house, surrounded now and covered with images and art as the trademark of Ellensburg. It was here that the demon coyote, the twisted bull, and the brass ape came from, because the images around this Dick and Jane site are probably the most evil and diabolical ever made from the 60s drug cult that eventually legalized and glorified marijuana, crack, and cocaine. So, now you know the rest of the story, why the YMCA was closed and is now shuttered in ruins, and the brass ape the twisted bull and the demon coyote have all overtaken and driven from Ellensburg the spirit of the West, and why Scott Center, our best preacher, left and said, "Scum of the earth, Ellensburg, scum of the earth." Now you know the rest of the story. Excuse me, is this the 7th Street Bicycle Trail?
7th Street, Central Washington.
Oh, from Central Washington.
Over to the DeWitt's.
Oh, and the DeWitt's is, the DeWitt's Cafe.
DeWitt's Cafe.
Oh, for the, now it's a kind of a bicycle trail cafe. Right. Okay, yeah, okay. There's the stage for the music concerts. Oh, they got a watchdog there and a bicycle too, wow. Oh, how cool. Must be patriotic. Okay, there's where the students sat, and tomatoes, they need some water. And this is all the students' seating. How very neat. So, here's the Bike Trail Cafe in 2017, trying desperately to reopen after drug addict renters robbed and destroyed it. But the legal weed crackers ruled the roost, and it was sold. And so here it is today as an omen for your future. Why? Well, Venezuela. Venezuela was also beautiful in its day back in 2003. Then came Obama with Reverend Wright, singing with Chavez for a totalitarian welfare state where nobody had to work. The government pays it all. Now, 70% of the people, 70? Yes, 70% of the people are starving and eating cats, dogs, and flamingos. Oh, she and I tried to make a difference, but Chavez already had a plan for Venezuela, with a bus driver for the new president. So, like an oracle speaking omens, how much of their future will soon be yours? It's really not a laughing matter what Obama did to America. The same thing that the Rat Pack did to Cuba. There was no reason why Cuba had to be a Bolivar revolution with Che and Castro. It could have been a good neighbor. So the final lesson of Venezuela is not something we can learn from. That's all past tense. It's only a question now is how much of an omen does that stand for America as we are now as a nation and the future that is coming? Okay, let's be bold and honest like Michael Savage. 9/11 was a planned demolition. Any pilot who earned a GED knows paper or aluminum airplanes do not fly through steel and concrete buildings. They bounce off. 9/11 was a planned demolition like the Cuban Missile Crisis. And how did the moon rover ever fit into the 60s space capsule? So, was Venezuela also a planned demolition? We know. By whom? But why on earth why? Maria's discharged captain and colonel uncles tried to explain, and I think I understood, by who it was all done, but the question remains why. Maduro now put the military today in 2017, in charge of the food bank. And yes, they have voter IDs, but not to see if you are a legal resident, but to see if you voted for them before you are fed your rice and beans. So we ask, if there's a spiritual presence behind all these actions, and what would you call that spiritual presence? Gabriel, who talked to Muhammad? Obviously the spirit here, as we see, was a planned demolition. But from what spirit? What is the spirit? Every Sunday, millions of Americans gather to hear Bible thumpers call down Gabriel from John's book of Revelations. But now, is Venezuela becoming a vision for America's future?